Today, we're talking about when you should close on your mortgage, more specifically on the actual day, because there's a lot of people out there that are like, you have to close on the first of the month, so you skip a mortgage payment. Some people pick their favorite number. So we're going to kind of debunk some of that stuff and just kind of really dive into how do you pick that. Before we dive into stuff, you guys hit the like and subscribe button so we can continue providing education to the military community around the VA home loan. So there's going to be a couple things when you're talking about picking the actual closing date itself, right? The closing date is a negotiated item for the purposes of buying a property, for when you're going to actually take ownership of a property, and then when the sellers are going to lose ownership of that property. There's going to be multiple things that factor into that, right? It could be the market, because in some places they want 2-week closings. Why? I'm not really sure, but kind of the standard is about 24 to 30 days from start to finish, right? So from actually going under contract to closing on a property, and depending on the type of property you're buying and where you're buying it will also change that amount of time, because in rural areas, it's a lot harder to get appraisers to go back out to the property. So it could take 30 days just for an appraisal to come back, and then you got to clear it. So there's going to be all of those factors that go into it. Now, at the same time, people that are selling homes, also, there's people out there when they sell, they're going to be buying a property. So that closing date is important for them to be able to purchase another property. So that's what's also going to drive it. There could be other factors, like let's say they're on active duty selling a home, but they have 2 months before they can close. Is it going to fit your time frame, right? So that's just kind of like the general overview of how the time itself is going to factor into a decision. But again, it's a negotiated item. Sometimes people want to say, hey, I want to do it. Buyers will be like, I want to really close fast. And the seller's like, well, in order for me to accept your contract, I actually need 45 days from start to finish. Are you going to be okay with that? Again, that's why it's negotiated. But what happens a lot of times too is that people are like, I want to close on the first of the month so I can skip a mortgage payment. Now, there's some truth to that, but it's not really all truth, because there's nothing free in life. So to give you an example, if you close at any day in the month of January, your first mortgage payment is going to be on March 1st was the due date, but you have a 15-day grace period. So your payment will be due by the 15th of the month. So again, if you close at any day between January 1st and the last day of the month, your first mortgage payment is going to be March 1st. And the reason that happens is because mortgages are paid in arrears, and you have to pay what's called per diem, which is the daily interest on a mortgage. So let me explain that piece, because this is where some of the debunking this process works, to be like, you don't actually skip a payment in this process. So we're going to stick with the January 1st closing date with a March 1st payment for this example. And let me first just talk about making a payment, what it is in arrears. So when you make a mortgage, so when your mortgage payment is due on March 1st, the reason that happens is because you're actually making a mortgage payment for February. And for January, you pay days of interest for the entire month in your actual closing, right? So you didn't skip a payment, you just prepaid that amount of money. Not only that, you also have to set up taxes and insurance for that duration of that month of January, plus setting up the additional month for February. So when you made your payment in March, you had all the necessary money you needed in your account, right? It's really important to understand that piece, because closing costs themselves, right? If you're thinking about budgeting for buying a property and how that works, it's tricky because lenders don't know the third-party costs associated on a purchase. On a refinance, it is very different. different. They have all that information. On a purchase, they just don't, right? Outside of origination fee and lender fees, that's how you're really going to compare lenders in that situation on a purchase. But outside of that, it can be pretty difficult to understand that, right? When you pay rent current, meaning when you make your January 1st rent, you're actually paying through the entire month. You pay February 1st, same thing, you pay for that entire month. Again, mortgages are paid in arrears. So let's say, for example, you close at the end of the month, right? You wouldn't have to pay any days of interest, right? You paid at the last day of January. You paid no days of interest. And then what your first payment is going to be March 1st. That just basically means you're just paying February's mortgage statement, including any escrows. So you don't have to prepay any of that money. And remember, when you make a mortgage payment, especially like your first payment, it is pretty much all interest. Only really till you get to the halfway period. So on a 30-year mortgage, 15 years into it, at that point, you're going to be paying more principal than interest. This is why it's also important to make extra payments to get to that where you're paying more principal than interest as soon as possible. But it just takes time. And with today's rates, again, it's going to take you a while to do that. But there's plenty of calculators online to be able to do that, to determine that. Now we've talked about that piece, and really, where does it make sense for you as an individual? It's up to you, because again, you're really paying for that, for those days of interest yourself. Nothing's going to be free on that. Let me take that back. There is an instance where it might make sense to actually close on the first of the month. That's when you're getting a significant seller credit, okay? The VA allows for all closing costs to be paid for, plus a 4% seller concession to pay down personal debt. It's the only loan program out there that can do that. It's unique to the VA loan. I think it's awesome. We've definitely utilized that before. But the problem is that if you don't have personal debt to pay off, then that money just goes back to the seller. So what can you do with that money, right? You can pay it towards prepaids if you have too many credits. So then it would make sense to say, let's close on the first of the month and have the sellers pay for my entire mortgage payment for that month, allowing me to get into that property to either move in right away or do repairs, whatever you need to do. All that's going to be factored into that piece. The other thing that can happen as well is that you can, let's say the sellers need more time to stay in that property, but you want to purchase it sooner. They need to sell because they need to buy, but they're not closing for a while. Is you can actually purchase a property from a seller and rent the property back to them for like a couple of days or a month. It really depends, and everyone's situation is going to be a little bit different. Now, when do you have to occupy a property? Typically within 90 days of purchasing a property. The VA does make an exception that you have up to a year to move into a property. And if you're on active duty, then you don't have to move into the property as long as your spouse or child is going to occupy that property. So it's pretty cool when, we're helping clients right now. I just got off the phone with somebody in Japan. I talked to somebody in South Korea, not North Korea. That'd be a whole different conversation. And then also I talked to somebody in Germany. All of them are buying homes back stateside because their spouse or child is going to be occupying that property and meeting that requirement. And there is no technical time limit on that. So hopefully you guys learned some stuff today. Please hit the like, subscribe, share our information with the veteran community. And if you guys have questions, schedule an appointment with us. We're happy to help. Have a good day.